Every Other Time with Eric is back with another amazing episode, man. Long awaited. This has been a dream for a long time. Long time. Actually, backstory before I introduce the guest. The last time we corresponded before this last time, I was kind of mad at him. I was like, you know what? I'm over it. I've been trying for 5 years. 5 years I have waited. Fareed Khimani, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good, man. You?
Such a pleasure to have you.
Likewise. Yeah,
It's a dream come true, man.
And for me as well, man. I had my dream come true last Friday afternoon.
Oh, yes.
Flying in the cockpit with you.
That was nice, man. That was nice.
Yeah, that was cool.
I'll give the audience a story. So I landed in Diani, as my audience knows, I fly. And like I'm saying, the last encounter I'd had with Fareed, were many previous very positive encounters, but the last time he was just not able to, we're not able to set this up.
Yeah.
And I took it personally because I think it was the fourth try. Granted, you're a busy guy, and of course, you may have evolved to learn not to take it personally because guys are busy and extremely busy. I'm lamenting right now about a function I have to go to after this, but I have to go.
Same.
Yeah,
I've got to go to a function after this. Yeah.
So I've kind of matured in that regard.
Yeah.
You know, when you're new, you kind of feel entitled.
Yeah.
So I saw Fareed in the lounge at Diani Airport with his laptop. I think he was doing some work, and I'm like, you know what? Don't avoid, just go say what's up. And I went and he did the man thing of it was very cool. Invited him to the cockpit. I'll put the picture right here. We flew back, gave him a proper front row seat to what
Yeah,
we
it was
do.
cool, man.
It was nice.
Yeah.
You enjoy it?
I really did.
How have you been, man?
I'm good, man. Yeah.
Still a legend, still looking young.
Alive and I just turned 51, actually.
You're 51.
Yeah, I turned 51 on the 10th of June.
I feel like, and no homo, I feel like in a way this guy raised me because I was telling Fox off air, I grew up on rock and till today, and in some circles I'm considered a weirdo because I like rock so deeply, and that has a lot to do with you and Capital FM and then eventually XFM, and it was so pivotal because I feel like music makes the soundtrack to your life.
Absolutely.
So your first crush, your first kiss, your first this, your first that. There's always a thematic song in the background.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit, man. What are you up to now?
Before I tell you that I saw this really funny meme. You speak about music, and it said in the 90s, Boys to Men.
I saw that. Yeah.
You saw that meme.
Yeah.
Can I just find it? It's the funniest thing because
had young men crying.
hold on. Here. So let me just because the music. Right, you can hear the music. And it says, Boys to Men had 90s kids crying like their marriage just ended over someone they only held hands with once.
That was so true.
It's so true.
Because you had a crush and she looked at you or she didn't look at you. And then now you're in the car on the ride home.
Yeah, you're listening to Boys to Men and weeping.
R.E.M. I remember, it's been a bad day.
R.E.M. is I followed R.E.M. my whole life from the age of around 15. I did a pilgrimage to Athens, Georgia to meet them. I showed up at the lead singer's house with a friend of mine. I went to and it was funny. We were just huge R.E.M. fans. I think it's one of the greatest bands of all time. And the music really spoke to me.
Absolutely, man.
Especially like the old stuff, you know? And so we drove to Athens, Georgia in like an old Volvo. The air conditioning was leaking inside the car, so the floor was wet. I still remember this. I think we were like 16, 17 years old. This good friend of mine called Shazi, and her and I. And then we ended up in Athens, Georgia, and someone said that's where the lead singer Michael Stipe lives on this road. So we went, knocked on the door, and no one answers. And all of a sudden, the door opens, and it's him.
Oh my God!
So we're like starstruck, and I'm like, I'm so sorry to knock on your door. You probably don't like that. And he's like, actually, I hate it. But then he was so cool. He's like, come to this club called the 40 Watt Club tonight. So, and it's called the 40 Watt Club because the whole club is lit by one 40 watt bulb.
Yeah,
this is a dark place.
Oh, 40 watt, like wow.
Yeah, like this really dark like room basically, and played darts with him and the guitarist Mike Mills the whole night. It was such a cool thing. And of course, when that happens, then it becomes like now, like, okay, I can't listen to any other music now. You know what I mean? And then I started bringing R.E.M. into because it's not a hugely popular band here. The rock tastes here are sort of like really mainstream-ish rock.
Coldplay.
Yeah, and Matchbox 20, and like sort of like college rock kind of stuff.
But R.E.M. I feel okay, of course, because of you.
Yeah.
It was integral even in XFM and that playlist for sure.
Yeah.
Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
Bad Day. I still listen. Like,
Losing My Religion.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny.
What's your favorite song?
My favorite song is a song by R.E.M. called The Flowers of Guatemala. I'm telling you now, no one watching this podcast has heard it. Go to YouTube, search R.E.M. Flowers of Guatemala. It is an incredible song. And they were talking about psilocybin, which is mushrooms, in the 80s. Mushrooms is this big craze now. People are microdosing mushrooms, and a particular mushroom called amanita, which I didn't even know until like 3 months ago.
Shining happy people as well.
Yeah.
Man, that just brings back such nice memories, man.
Yeah.
But you've told your story severally, so we're not gonna go so back into like where were you born. You've done it on several platforms.
Yeah.
You've even done an engage talk. But I'm more interested in from the point of radio. And you said something interesting when I flew you. You said you had to walk away because you felt like the format had just now lost all its artist. Like it's no longer what it used to be.
Yeah, look, if I'm being honest about radio in 2025, it's a shit show.
Is that here, Kenyan?
Yeah, here. Globally, radio is still great. In the UK, in the US, in Australia, big formats, it's still great. I think, look, it's not a shit. I think I'm being harsh because we kind of grew up in this sort of radio fundamental world where you do things a certain way.
Purists.
Yeah, and so if you listen to Capital FM in Nairobi, for example, when Shanice and I were on air, if you went to London and you heard their version of Shanice and Fareed in the morning, there was a similarity. Yeah. No one spoke for too long. The content was clearly defined. When they were talking, they had a beginning, a middle, and an end. They played enough music every hour. News happened on time, et cetera, et cetera. I've said this a number of times in public forums, but I'll say it again. The death of radio here was when influencers were given radio jobs. I'm not saying that you can't be a radio host as an influencer, but you can't be a radio host because you're an influencer. Does that make sense?
I agree with the side of things, but I also feel why is it that because you guys were mavericks in the radio space, man, like undeniably, and like you said, the kind of shows you guys did, especially like at Capitol, it was provided it was you're an English speaker. Anyone in the world could have actually listened to your show and resonated.
And a big shout out to Shanice because I have I've been paired with a number of different people. Oftentimes I just say I'll just do the show alone, and I don't think I was lucky enough that I could carry a show alone. But I will say that I never had a better co-host than Shanice. But there was just this. Two completely different people, by the way.
Yeah.
Shanice was sort of very structured and sort of, had her whole life planned out and, never touched a drop of alcohol, didn't drink. And then there was me who was like...
touching every drop of alcohol.
Yeah. Creative, but like wild, used to be out till 3-4 in the morning and show up. Do the show, no problem, but obviously until I couldn't. But we just gelled, and then we had so many fun. I remember some of the stuff that was pulled off air. There were 2 features that were pulled off air. One was cleavage basketball. I don't know if anyone ever remembered this.
Nah.
So I used to, because we used to sit like this.
Yeah.
So I used to roll up little things of paper, and then I would throw it, and it wasn't like the sexual thing. You know what I mean? It was just really funny, And I think the beautiful thing about radio is when you're doing things like that, you're sort of painting pictures with words. So your listeners just wondering, like, what does that even look like? And there was no like smartphones and social media. So, I'd be like, okay, 10 out of, how many can I get out of 10 cleavage basketball? And, you can only imagine what's going through the listener's mind.
You'd have to take a proper mental picture
of
what's happening.
Yeah. And then the other one was porn or tennis. Both of these were pulled off air quite quickly. So porn or tennis was... actually, to be fair, we never actually took sounds from porn, but we used to take tennis audio, women's tennis audio, and this is like in this day and age, I'm not sure we could get away with this. And then we would like mash it all together. And we'd ask our audience, "Is this porn or tennis?" It was always tennis, but 7 out of 10 guesses were always like, "That's porn." I'm like, "Nope, that's Serena Williams." You know what I mean?
Wow.
Yeah, but both of those were. Chris Kirubi, like after like those being on air for like 3 days, he's like, take that shit off air, But it was always fun to innovate and do cool things like that. Not everything was sort of X-rated like that either. The pranks and all that. I don't think there's a pride in the medium here anymore. It's about getting by, finishing your hours, getting paid.
Your check.
Yeah.
But let me hold your feet to the fire because it tends to be a problem I see generationally. Me coming as the next generation is that the mavericks before us did not groom is the wrong word in this day and age.
Yeah, you can't use groom.
Groom sounds like...
Groom the children? No, you can't say that, man.
Epstein. No, but did not... What's the word? When you kind of take someone under your wing and kind of prodigy, you know?
Yeah, mentor, I think is the word
Mentor,
you're
you
looking
guys
for,
did
yeah.
mentor.
You see, that's. I think there's a misconception there, because if I look at the generation of radio presenters that came after me, so that's sort of Ciao, Italia, Eve, although Eve was kind of crossed over into our generation, but younger, she came after. Makbul.
Where did Talia go?
Italia, I speak to her often, actually. Actually, funny enough, the other day she sent me she posted something with a song, and I said, great song. And she said I was trained by the best. You know what I mean? So I did do a lot of work with these presenters. And during COVID, at Capital, I was doing training with Tracy Wanjiru on Saturday Breakfast. I did some work with Anne on The Fuse. I was never precious about my job. I always knew that at some point another Fareed would come along. And I think you have to have that in mind. To be honest, it hasn't happened yet, which is crazy to me. But I would have no problem if someone said to me, we're going to put this person on Breakfast. I mean, it happened to Phil when he came back. So he came and left. And when I came to Capital, he wasn't there. And then he came back from New Zealand. And, immediately he came back. I was doing Breakfast alone at that time because the previous presenter, Dusty Rhodes, if you remember this guy.
Of course I remember Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah, so it was me and Dusty. My first radio duo was me and Dusty. Dusty had left.
Dusty Rhodes.
So I was then given Capital in the morning, and Caroline Motoko was on KISS. And she was killing it. I had no experience. I'd done like 3 weeks of sports presenting, and I was just given this morning show. So we were getting hammered by KISS, right? And KISS was new in the market, and they were this sexy station and urban, and it was like black, you know what I mean? And Capital was this Mzungu state, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The misconceptions. So Phil, they brought Phil back from New Zealand. And immediately he came back, there was a press conference. And someone asked Phil if he was going back on air, and I was at the press table. And he said, yeah, I'll be going back to Breakfast. And I had no idea. So I'm like, fuck, have I just lost my job? Yeah. And then anyway, they put me on Drive. And it was a great show. I did Drive, it was super. And then the owner Linda, made the decision to take Phil off. The audience had moved on from the Phil Matthews type of radio. And they were like, no, put this guy back on air. We like him. He's kind of Kenyan and kind of American. Put Fareed back on air. So I ended up replacing Phil. Right? Because there was always going to be another Phil Matthews.
Yeah.
And that was me. So it was very interesting while I was on radio for 24 years on and off, that there was never really the next Fareed. And I did train people. Granted, most of the people I trained, actually now that I think about it, were mostly women. But one of the people I did train was Mark Bull. And I thought when I was training him that he was going to be the sort of...
Yeah.
And he's a super talented guy. Whether it happened or not is irrelevant. He did replace me when I left this last time for a short period, and now it's someone else on air.
No, shout out to Mark Bull, but it's a different level if you ask me. I mean, I'm just being objective here. I mean, I've listened to both your shows. Different style. I mean, I would not say that's like when Nani came to replace Cristiano. It was a lot of high expectations. Is that mean?
I mean, if you're calling me Cristiano, I'm okay with it. You know what I mean?
No, but what I'll say, I got to ask you though. You've talked about getting the breakfast show from Phil Matthews. How old were you at the time?
26, 25.
26.
I was young, man.
You're young. And how was that stepping into such a role? And before you answer that, I also want to ask, you talk about KISS and competition. I feel like those were apples and oranges.
No, for sure. I think look, there was a sophisticated audience that wanted international content before you could access it on a phone or on your iPad or on your laptop, right? This is pre-YouTube. This is pre-Facebook. This is pre-Instagram. This is pre-Twitter or X.
This is well-spaced receiver days.
Yeah. So, those who are cultured, who craved, sophisticated media, Capital was their home. And, how we did it, I don't know. I'll go back into what makes a good radio presenter in a moment. So, but KISS got the masses, right? And Caroline was amazing. I mean, she is amazing. And she had Nyambane, and it was like this sort of comedian and presenter thing, which, as you can see, it still carries on. Look at Classic in the Morning, So I think you can say apples and oranges, but I think it was an alternative to one station.
So where does, and that's something I even struggle with as a contemporary podcast, where I'm trying to push this whole thing to an international appeal where anyone watching, provided speak English, can watch this and like it. And I've started making strides in that. versus mass appeal locally?
Well, look, I don't think you'll never be everything to everyone. And this was one of the first things Phil trained me to do, because initially when Phil was taken off breakfast, there was a lot of friction between him and I, because I think he thought he was coming back to be the Phil Matthews of 1996 to 2000, which was like, well, we've never heard anything like this. This Mzungu's amazing. You know, he trained Caroline, he trained Maina. If you look at all the people that were trained by Phil, we're all still quite relevant. But when he got down to sort of like giving me his knowledge, that's one of the things he taught me was you'll never be everything to everyone, and as many people that love you will hate you, and just be ready for that, And in those days, you were just getting SMSs from people saying, get this idiot off air. But it's interesting. I always tell people that the people that hate you are the ones that comment every day, which means they're still listening anyway.
Prezo says haters are fans in disguise. That's one thing.
Look at Maina. How many people complain about Maina? They still listen to Maina every morning.
I feel like it's reached a point, and shout out Maina, no hate. I feel like a lot of times we are subjected to Maina, not that you listen to Maina.
Because there's no alternative. That's the problem. If I had $5 million in my bank, truthfully,
don't you?
No, not yet. But that I could spend, I would set up a radio station tomorrow, and everything else would be finished in this market.
But let's look westerly, right? I asked you this also in flight. I was flying a plane and interviewing Fareed as he's seated here. But for real, like, if you look at the States, some of the biggest radio presenters right now, Charlemagne the God, The Breakfast Club, they are handling the trifecta pretty well. So they are radio, audio, video, YouTube, digital, all in one, and it's working.
Yeah.
So why aren't we doing that here? We have Spice FM, but still that's Kenyan. There's no way someone in...
I think Spice is it's got its audience, but it's not for everyone, right?
It's very Kenyan.
Yeah,
for lack of a better word.
And
I know
I'll
get crucified for saying
we're just not evolving, to be. I mean,
you said it.
Yeah, the sort of, you have to be global in this day and age, right? Because let's be honest, you can tune into, or you can subscribe to your podcast, or you can subscribe to the Breakfast Club.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
So we're competing on that level. But I feel like also that mass appeal, of course, has short-term gains, and short-term gains tends to be money. So a lot of these guys are, like, I'm sure Miner's check is ridiculous but I wonder internally, does he still get job satisfaction from doing what he does?
I don't really...
Are you guys friends?
Well, I mean, of course, we chat on and off. If we see each other, we chat. We don't really... We don't hang out. I would assume he does it out... I would like to think he does it out of love, but you never know. Things change in life, and sometimes it's the job you did for too long, and then you're sort of stuck. And, one of the reasons I left radio just before I turned... I was 49, I think, when I left radio. Yeah, 2023, December. I went on this spiritual retreat. I don't know if I can talk about this on air, but
sure. This is every other time with Eric, man. Nothing's off.
I did a plant medicine retreat with ayahuasca.
Yeah. How was that, man?
It was unbelievable.
One of my closest friends is considering.
Yeah, it's
Sajid from Coffee Pump Podcast.
Well, the thing is people say, if you do mushrooms, it's a warm hug. If you do ayahuasca, it's a kick in the face. But I resigned before I went on this retreat because I didn't want my retreat to be filled with thoughts of Capital FM.
Where did you
go? I did it in Kenya.
In Lamu?
At the coast,
yeah. Part of the center.
Yeah, it's amazing. And I won't go into obviously that, but the truth of the matter is, when I came back, I was supposed to work until the 18th of December because I'd resigned on the 18th of November. And I drove to Two Rivers, where Capital had moved to, my first day back from this retreat, which was a 4-day retreat. And as I was driving out of Two Rivers, I was like, God, please, I don't want to go back. And I got an email within 3 minutes saying not to come back, and they'll pay me the rest of my... And truthfully, I can say this now, the MD that was there at the time was possibly the dumbest human being I've ever come across in my life, had no media background, was absolutely aggressive. I'm not going to name his name. I'm not going to name him, but people know who he is. And I just had this...
Plus, you being you probably let him know.
No, of course I let him. I let him know many times.
I know. From your demeanor and disposition around things.
No, I let him know many times, and I think that the day that I came back, we had a run-in again, like we did almost every day. And I let him know how I felt about him. And I was praying that was going to be enough for them to tell me not to come back. And I get asked a lot now, Do I miss it? You asked me on the plane, and without even a hesitation, I do not miss it at all. It was time to move on, and moving on from there was no what next for me. It was just I'm done, and I think what happens in life is you get scared, you have something secure that pays okay or relatively well or very well, whatever it is. 50,000 shillings is a lot of money to some people, and 500,000 shillings is very little to others. You know what I mean? So it's relative, and you just stick around. And what are they? If you look at all the sort of advice, the sort of motivational speakers and the sort of Joe Dispenzas and the Gabor Mates and the Tony Robbins will give you is fear is necessary for growth. I woke up one morning, the 2nd of December, going at 4 a.m. because that was my internal alarm clock, going, what the fuck am I going to do with my life? That was the only time.
But let me ask you this, because you touched on something that's very relevant to me. I look at some of my colleagues, all of course more senior than me, older than me, and I see that some of them are stuck in the inertia of the financial requirements of sustainability. So you'll find, like you said, people hang around, and sometimes it's also financial, like, okay, I need this check and I need to survive. I've kind of set up my life in a way that's around.
But is it a case of, yeah, I agree. I mean, I stayed on, I always say I stayed at Capital 2 years too long because I knew I wanted to leave when, and again, I'm happy to share this now. I was asked to apply for the MD job and I didn't get it. That's when I should have left. And I had told them I will do the MD job and I will be on air 5 days a week, but I will leave the show at 9 instead of 10, and my co-host would continue 9 to 10, which is fine because people aren't really listening at that time. And I would take on the MD duties. That's when I should have left. That was a kick in the face to me. But in hindsight, it's a shit show. I'm glad I didn't get it.
Okay, let's go back to the plant medicine without being specific about the place where you did it, because that's become, we share something in common. We're both in recovery. And I think you and I alike also have realized that there's not one way to do recovery, right? It's very dynamic. It's very personal, right? And of course, when I've considered things like plant medicine, my fear has always been, am I trying to get high undercover? Like when I've thought about shrooms, I know my personality. Am I seeking for answers? Or am I just trying to find a way
It's so interesting you're asking this question. I've had this conversation about 5 times this past week.
Yeah.
And people have asked me, but you're an addict in recovery. Why would you go and do ayahuasca? Why would you do microdose psilocybin, which is the active chemical in mushrooms? So let me, I can break it down for you very easily.
Please.
So I did a 4-day retreat, the 23rd to the 27th of November. And then spent an extra day in Watamu with some friends that were on the retreat, just to sort of, before we came back to Nairobi's craziness. And there's like a 2-week afterglow, right? Where you're just like, all the things you saw and things you realized about yourself on this incredible journey.
There's a shaman?
It's a full shamanic experience. So you're guided and all that, right? Now, here's the interesting thing. After 2 weeks, I was sort of back in my old... Like, oh, okay, cool. So then I started thinking to myself, did I just go and get fucked up for 4 days? Is that what happened? And then in July of 2024, I started to feel the medicine again. I had only done it the one time. And then I thought to myself, I'm going to book another ayahuasca retreat, right? Like a typical fucking addict.
Yeah.
Right? So I
Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Yeah. I booked 2 since that one, and I've canceled both of them before because I didn't feel cool to the medicine. I just didn't need it. So clearly I'm not addicted to that substance or that medicine, right? So no, I don't think it has I think there's a very fine line between drugs and medicine. The other thing that it did for me, which I never realized until about 6 months ago, I was on antidepressants, anti-anxiety medication. I had gone through a very difficult relationship with a co-worker at Capital. I won't get into the details of that.
I think I have my guesses.
Yeah, I think you probably guessed right. We'll talk about it off air. But anyway, long story short, I was on anti-anxiety, antidepressants. I was not feeling great, okay? So 7 weeks before the retreat in the coast, this plant medicine retreat, I had a Zoom call with the shaman who was coming in from another country, and she said, are you on any antidepressants? No, she didn't say it. She's told me that I was. And I said, yes. She goes, okay, well, you need to quit cold turkey. And if you don't, you can still come to the retreat, but they're blockers. So nothing will happen, or it'll be very minimal, right? So, okay, fine. So that was a Friday. Saturday morning, I woke up, I threw the anti-anxiety medication I was on was called mirtazapine. I threw it in the bin. It was the hardest 7 weeks of my life. I have no idea how my partner, who I'm still with now, stayed with me during that period. I have no clue.
Anxiety attacks?
No, I was just an asshole because, I mean, let me tell you, coming off drugs, like hard Class A narcotics, was a walk in the park compared to coming off that stuff. Anyway, I went on this retreat. And then,
Don't scheme over that. I want to talk about because that's an important conversation to have, especially in this day and age, because a lot of people are going through something similar. And like you said, your partner was graceful enough to tolerate you.
I don't know how she's still with me. Like, I was broken.
Describe it. Mood swings,
couldn't sleep, waking up with my heart pounding,
racing thoughts,
shouting. She'd make me dinner. I'd come home and be like, I'm going to bed. Like, it was just a disaster. I mean, I've had CrossFit, which was the only thing I could do, because then you're just beating yourself to death in the gym, which felt right for that period. And I'll get back to pharmaceuticals in a moment, because I have some very strong thoughts about that too.
Okay.
So I was on, so if you were to look at my timeline of recovery, 2018, I went to rehab. 4 years of kind of dabbling in and out of using, not using, not coke, the drugs I didn't use, but out drinking, thinking I can control my drinking. And then,
this time will be different.
Yeah, and then after a week of, 1 or 2 whiskeys a day, you're now on half a bottle to a bottle, and then you realize the cycle's continuing, right? Got clean again in, last drink was when we buried my mom, which was 19th of March 2019. So it's been over 3 years now. But I was on the pharmaceutical stuff, the anti-anxiety, antidepressant medication. So if you really want to look at my recovery, even when I was on the antidepressants, that's still active addiction.
Yeah. Any Xanax?
No, but I was starting to take Dormicom and things to sleep. I mean, but this is active addiction. Yeah, it's active addiction that is prescribed by a doctor, which is fucking ridiculous, right? But just to go back to the ayahuasca experience, when I came, then I was microdosing mushrooms while I was coming off the anti-anxiety medication to sort of quell my anxiety, which I don't know if it helped or not, to be honest. But, I'd quit cold turkey on the mirtazapine.
Did you feel the effects of the microdose?
To a degree. So I had like 4 different types of psilocybin, right? And, like depending on the mood, you just whatever. I mean, I have a shaman friend in the coast who was kind of guiding me through that part. Long story short, I came back from ayahuasca. Not once have I wanted to go back on the antidepressants. Those 4 containers of psilocybin, I've never touched. If I get a headache, I don't even take Panadol. When I threw my back out in November last year, the doctor wanted to give me Vicodin, which is an amazing.
It works perfectly, but it works too well.
I mean, it's an opioid.
Yeah.
I told him I'm an addict, so I said, so what do I take? And he said, I think you'll have to just take Panadol. I don't even take Panadol for a headache anymore, my friend. Right? So,
did you purge during the ceremony?
Yes.
What did you see?
Oh, man. I could take you through my journey very quickly in 2 minutes.
Please.
So I went in, you write down your list of intentions. I want to connect with my motherhood past. I want to understand my addiction. I want to know blah, blah, blah. What am I doing with my life? I lay on this mattress after taking my first cup. I fell asleep. And when I woke up, there was this beautiful Nubian goddess dancing. And I don't know if maybe it was someone in the room or it was hallucination. I'm not sure. And then this voice in my head said, all the shit you've put women through for the last 3 years, you're going to go through it right now. Let me tell you, I cried and screamed out, I'm sorry, for what felt like hours on end. And I needed to see that because my addiction after getting clean from drugs and alcohol became sex and love. And I had 3 relationships before I met my partner now. And I put all 3 of those women through hell.
And sex and love is you're selling dreams, huh?
I mean, we'll get married, you can move in, we'll have kids, I'm ready for another family.
It was always you.
Yeah, but funny enough, all my, a lot of my friends, they'd be like, oh yeah, that chick was a psycho,
You're like, why didn't you tell me real time?
No, you believe it until you look in the mirror one day and say, but there was only one person present in all those relationships. That was me. So ayahuasca opened me up to what I need to give in a relationship as well. But the other thing it really did for me is it has eliminated any need for man-made medicine in my life.
Okay.
I do not need any medicine that has been manufactured by some big pharmaceutical company to make me feel better. When I threw out my back in November, I went to the doctor, had an MRI. Doctor and physio both said you need to have back surgery. They need to shave off the bulging disc because it's trapping your nerve. I went to a second doctor at MP Shah, and he was like, I would avoid it, the surgery, because it'll be a repetitive.
What's with doctors nowadays and being so quick to want to get like under your...
Yeah, and to get you under the knife. And I literally, with exercise, food, and meditation, have willed my back to health. I was doing a CrossFit class today.
Big Pharma don't want to hear that though.
No,
they're probably going to flag this episode.
But I mean, I couldn't jump on the boxes.
Yeah. You're still jumping at 50?
On the second highest.
Yeah.
Granted, before my injury, I was on the highest.
Yeah.
But I willed my back to get better, and I did it without anything. And so going back to now pharmaceutical medication, because you wanted to touch on that, it's a lie. And this, to big pharma, you are lying to people.
Is it a lie in terms of dependency or placebo? What do you mean? It's a lie.
You don't need it. I'm sorry to say it. You do not need medication. There are certain medications you have to take. If you are coming off a potential or an almost overdose, and you need to be put into a detox center, of course you need medication for that, right? But
pain?
No, I don't agree with pain medication. Cancer, yes, to a degree, but the people are also now trying the natural ways of curing cancer and stuff. But I will say something interesting that, someone asked me the other day, I was having this conversation, this woman turned to me and said, so you're saying that postpartum depression doesn't exist? And I said, you are actually twisting my words. Postpartum depression 100% exists, like diabetes exists, like cancer exists, like mental health conditions exist, the things you can't see, whether it's bipolar or depression or anxiety. But I'm saying there are other ways to take care of those situations.
Alternative means, yes.
Yeah. What is the best medicine? Food, right?
Food, fasting.
What's the best counselor? The gym. If someone does those two things right, you will realize very soon how little you need big pharma for.
Can I say something around that? I think my audience know this. I talked to the friend of mine called Ricky Osia the other day. That was how long? 2 months? And I was telling him how it was a season of a lot of high stress, job, podcast, trying to balance everything. And I started having a bit of anxiety. And as soon as I signed up back to gym and I started getting my regular endorphins, everything just came back to normal. Literally.
But it's the answer, bro.
Cutting out sugar. Like everything just became clear again. And Sajid and I, my good friend from Coffee Pump, we go through the same thing. We're chubby guys naturally. And the moment we kind of slack off our gym regimen and eating right, the mental health just starts taking a beating. And you just start going down this rabbit hole.
I don't want to be the one who says this is the way life should work, but truthfully, and look, I'm not saying, look, I'm not a medical expert. I'm barely an addiction counselor, you know what I mean? But if there are so many other ways to do it, but big pharma wouldn't exist unless they could lie to people about what they need. I certainly did not need to be on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication. I was just going through a shitty relationship. Yeah. That's it.
What about a system we both know well, and without being specific, because we can't name anyone. That's basically the nature of that system. It's something I walked away from, but it was foundational in my recovery from alcohol, AA. And when I left AA, the vibe I got was like, the clock has started now. You've left.
Yeah. The countdown's begun.
It begins now. I was scared to leave. And the reason I left is because it had become impractical. Before my current job, I was earning peanuts and I was being told to make 1990. I'm like, I can't make 1990, even mobility-wise. I don't have means to go to Westlands from...
there's not a lot of meetings in Upper Hill, dude.
I wasn't living here. At that time I was living, bro, that was before this current version of me in terms of... Things were tough. And when I told my sponsor at the time, like, I think this is not working for me. He's like, you've done it. And you've done it to yourself. And I was telling my wife, like, hey, I think, have I relapsed? I'm like, have I already relapsed, But this is 4 years later. And for you, how was that experience? Or are you still part of it?
Sure. So, let's talk about AA. I did 76 meetings in 90 days after rehab, right? So I'd never got 90 and 90 because I don't think it's possible. But I think they give you that benchmark so you can
push yourself.
Try and do as many as you can, right? There are so many elements of AA that I love. I think the first friends you have in recovery, because you can't really go back to the old stomping grounds where, people, I used to be at Kengeli's 4 or 5 nights a week. That's where I used to see my friends. Now I'm friends with still a number of them, but I don't see them at Kengeli's for obvious reasons. So I think it's great. It's your first community in recovery, and I think that's wonderful. I think some of the teachings are incredible. I think if you're looking at 1934 in Akron, Ohio, when it was created, talking about spiritual awakenings and higher power, that's way ahead of its time, bro. Yeah. People get afraid when you hear the word, admitted I was powerless over alcohol, my life had become unmanageable, realized that God is the only one. When they hear that word God, they panic.
The way they were able to fuse higher power outside religious confines.
It's beautiful.
Brilliant.
In the 30s, in Middle America, that's crazy. An interesting fact is AA was founded on my birthday as well, 10th of June.
Wow.
So, 40 years before I was born. So they were waiting for me.
Bob.
They were waiting for me.
No, Bill, sorry.
Yeah, Bill W. But so, there are elements of AA that I absolutely love. I have some very close friends in the program. I have been told my biggest truths by people in the program. With the relapse I had when my mom died, I shared about it. It was on a Saturday. On Sunday, I went to a meeting, and I shared about the relapse. And most people were like, dude, we get it. Your mom died, And as I was leaving, I ran into a fellow in the rooms called Neil. And he's like, oh, are you okay? I heard your share. And I said, yeah, I relapsed. Good enough reason. He looked me dead in the eyes and said, there's never a good enough reason. That comment has kept me sober for 3 years.
That's so profound. Of course, we'll edit that name out.
No, you can. I haven't said his last name.
But the sober no matter what principle, where as addicts, we prepare for the relapse. Like, okay, if I lose my job, surely.
Yeah. Or if I get a job.
If my wife dies, surely.
No, let me tell you what addicts do. Yeah. Addicts only celebrate on special days. Birthdays, holidays, and Tuesdays. Right? I mean, we don't need a reason, dude. Yeah. You know what I mean? We don't need a reason. It can be getting a job, losing a job.
Yeah.
Having a baby, losing a baby.
And actually, I've relapsed for especially getting and losing a job, both.
Yeah.
Like I got a job, yes.
Yeah. Or someone you realize that the client that hasn't paid you, check your M-Pesa and there's 200K in it. What's the first thing you're thinking about doing as an addict? Getting fucked up, right? I mean, I still, whenever I get that ping, I'm like, oh, and then I'm like, hold on, I'll go and have a coffee. Yeah.
Do you know something I struggle with? Are there, they say primary substance of choice. For me, mine was booze. And are there substances you've ever mulled over, like, maybe I can control this?
A Malbec, a good red Malbec, a good Malbec wine.
Yeah.
Red wine. Malbec is a red wine. And I was talking about this morning. I was at a friend's restaurant a few days ago, and because I'm people drink around me, and often they'll say, "Is it okay?" I don't care. It doesn't bother me. You can have whiskey, you can have beer, you can have white wine, you can have anything but a Malbec. But if you pull out a Malbec in front of me, I will struggle. My mouth will start to water. And they pulled out a really nice bottle of Malbec, and I was like, I have to leave. Because if I sit here, and they're like, no, we wouldn't let you drink. And I'm like, but who are you? You don't. Yeah. That's me. Yeah. That's up to me.
Yeah.
And but so sorry.
What about because I want to take my wife to Amsterdam because now I have rebate tickets with KQ, and one thing I keep telling us, you're telling me, we'll go to Amsterdam, we'll go to coffee shops, and I'm not gonna be able. She's like, no, we don't even have to go to Amsterdam, like.
But why do you want to go to Amsterdam?
You see, exactly. So the addict brain still lives.
Yeah, because the relapse happens long before you pick up the drug, dude. Long before.
You're setting up, and I had to catch myself. I'm like, I'm setting the stage to have an excuse.
Birthdays, holidays, and Tuesdays.
Even I had to slow down, even on coffee.
Oh, I love coffee.
Because I'd be like Americano with an extra shot of espresso. So the time I was ordering that at the airport, when it became a habit, in between flights, I go Americano, extra shot of espresso. The other day, the guy told me, "Nani, okay, whiskey." Like, he's just calling me out like, bro, what are you trying to do?
Yeah,
like, why are you taking... Why does it have to be so strong? And I realized that's just the same...
But look, addiction's a weird thing, right? I mean, it's a strange sort of place to be. And we're very lucky to be addicts, I feel, because, and that's the other thing I love about AA, because one of the things, the 12 steps you're forced to do is take a really good hard look at yourself, which every fucking human being should do, addict or not, because 90% of people are assholes, right?
Yeah.
So 4 and 5 and 8 and 9, the amends step. It's interesting because I always say we're quite lucky to have been given a program that makes us look inward, because most people don't do that, right? Most people are, there's two types of people in the world. There's people who are asleep, and there's people who are awake or waking up. I don't think you're ever fully awake, but you're on the path of awakening. I like to think of myself as someone who's on a path of awakening. At what stage, I don't know. But 90% of the people I interact with on a daily basis are fast asleep. They don't look at themselves. They don't want to, they're very quick to blame. I have a former business partner in recent business that is just we're just winding up, that it was never his fault, and a typical person who would just blame everything on his mental health. Oh, my mental health is fragile. Okay, that's fine. I get it. But also, everyone in the world can say that.
Let's take it a step further to accountability.
Yeah. And what can you do? Or rather, what tools do you need? Because I'm in that space. I can give you tools till the cows come home on how to handle your mental health. And he's an addict in recovery as well. So it's really interesting when you come across people that are asleep and you think, man, if everyone did this honest and fearless moral inventory and then shared it with a sponsor or a friend and your higher power, the release and the relief that gives you. So there are some beautiful elements to the program. On the adverse, right? I don't want to be sitting in a room 20 years from now saying I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic.
20 years sober, yeah.
I don't believe I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic now. If I wake up today and the first thing I want to do is have a drink, I promise you I'll go to a meeting today or tomorrow and I will say I'm an alcoholic, right? But I don't have those inclinations anymore. And I never had a problem quitting alcohol. I had a problem not numbing my pain. So when it went from alcohol, it then became women. I mean, it's just another numbing, right? How many women can I get? How many women can I fuck with? How many women can I have on my phone while I'm in a serious relationship with someone else? Because it's all dopamine hit. Every ping of, a shot of tits or whatever the case may be, or someone sending you a sexy message, it's all dopamine. It's like a line of cocaine or a shot of whiskey. I mean, it's the same shit, right? So, when I went into the sex, I mean, obviously I've been a sex and love addict for many years, but it became extremely prevalent in my recovery because I just wanted women around me, and I wanted to have a woman at home. And then I wanted to have 20 women on my mobile phone, and I wasn't going out and actively cheating, but I had, is it cheating if you're messaging women? Probably. Like if you were to message other women, your wife would be upset, right? Yeah, and as would my partner. So
how does that work? Sorry. How does that work with some sense or because you're a famous guy, let's call it what it is. And we see world over what's happening. There's a lot of, look at Diddy. Look at anyone who has some form of notoriety.
How did Kanye show up to Diddy's court hearing yesterday? What the Kanye just...
No, Kanye loves... He's addicted to fame.
Yeah, but Kanye is a no fucks guy, dude. No fucks given guy. Yeah. That guy is showing up in support of... there is not one person besides Diddy's sons and mother that are supporting this fucking animal, and Kanye shows up. I mean, he's... let me tell you, I credit where it's due. If there's anyone who doesn't give a fuck what people think, and that's really a great place to be, it's Kanye West.
He had a song with the N-word and anti-Semitic in the same sentence, man.
He's a madman.
He's one of a kind.
But so going back to this sort of Me Too and fame and all that, look, I think...
No, aren't you ever scared like someone can come out of the wood, even just vibing chicks, even right now, even let's say you are single, just being who you are. Aren't you a bit apprehensive?
I think the world has changed, but also I think, it's funny. Amina, my former co-host on radio, who is still a friend, once said, and this is an amazing thing, actually, she's been in the TV and media and film and this sort of space for many years. And one day someone was asking her, right when this Harvey Weinstein happened, we were on air together. So obviously this was a conversation that was ongoing. And on air, it came up. I gave Amina her first job in television on a show called Mashariki Mix, which was like 60 seconds with Amina or 2 minutes with Amina. It was a segment in the show. And she was like a nobody at the time, you know? And, you know, she will always accredit it. She was all of a sudden making whatever she was making, that we were giving her an Mnet in those days, you know, rate for her work. And she actually said on air, she goes, "You're the only person who never made me feel uncomfortable." Right? Now, I'm not saying I was like that with everyone because I don't know. But then I had an adverse situation with another colleague who said some things about me not... I'm not going to get into it. I don't know how this will ever pan out. But some things that could have been misconstrued as something else. And, you know, if things like this leak, if emails to HR leak, you know, you can have one person, like the MD at Capital, who could have been like, "I don't like Fareed, so...
Perfect.
We're going to leak this."
Yeah.
Globally, you're untouchable at that point. It's a really dangerous area, you know. I would like to think that I've been very, what's the word? Fair, but also just
dignified,
respectful of, you know, women in my life, in a work setting. Obviously, I've had my share of relationships that have gone south, which I take credit for. You know, and with my behavior in certain areas, but you never know, right? I mean, you know, I feel like if one person was to come out and say something about anyone, to say, you know, Fareed made me feel this way, I feel like, you know, you could have a string of other people that maybe you've never met before saying it. You know, I take Russell Brand, for example. I think that everyone like Harvey Weinstein, Diddy, all these people should be brought to book 100%. In the case of Russell Brand, who's a recovering addict, I'm not sure if you're aware. He's got a wonderful...
Now a Christian as well.
Yeah, he's got a wonderful book called Recovery.
Yeah.
If you haven't, if you have Audible on your phone, the audiobook app, listen to it.
He challenged conventional AA.
Yeah, but well, he narrates his own story. It's quite phenomenal because he's got this really unique way of sharing a story. I feel like Russell Brand is getting the hard end of the stick. And this is so unpopular because I probably shouldn't say this, you know, and maybe we're going to cut this bit out. I don't know. There's something about that story that I feel like it's not legit. And this is how bad it can get. Now, it's a tough time to be human.
We have Busbys of this world nowadays who are literally ambulance chasers, but on the sexual front, where they actually rally the troops. If you look like you have a nice, Fareed is just about to sign with Spotify, $40 million deal.
Let's fuck him.
Then all of a sudden, this guy is all like 100 women from the woodwork are like, yo.
You've got to be so careful, you know. I think it's a really delicate time, and I think the best thing you can do for yourself is to always ensure that you treat everyone with respect the best way you can. But, you know, if it happens, it happens. You just have to fight through it. You know, Harvey Weinstein opened the door, I think, for this to happen. And you know, he is an animal. He's a monster. And I think there's probably a number of other monsters out there. You know, but again, I think there's a massive gray area around it now. Having said that, do I condone, you know, the calling out of men who have put women in this situation? Absolutely. I think it has to happen. If a man has made any woman feel like, or vice versa for that matter, it needs to be pointed out. It needs to be, you know, exposed. But
what about timelines? Because I feel, and I'll use Cosby. It's a terrible example because what he did was horrible, you know. But culturally at the time, it was the norm. I know it sounds crazy to say. It's like the way Hollywood producers back in the day had bedrooms in the back. Like,
well, that's what Harvey Weinstein was living in that era, right? That's what happened.
So is it fair to judge someone with the backdrop of the present about things in the past? Because
absolutely. I think it is.
You think so?
Yeah, look, it's a moral thing, dude. Like, I mean, even if you were Cosby's age in the 70s.
I'm not drugging no one, man. I wasn't drugging nobody.
Right? Even if you had Harvey Weinstein's power 7, 8, 9, however long ago this happened, are you gonna pull your dick out at a fucking casting and start jerking off? No, dude. It's fucking common decency, bro. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So no, I don't think timelines matter. I think the time to expose these people is now. You know, the voices are being heard now. I think if this had happened 20 years ago, I don't think anyone would have paid attention to it, if I'm being honest. Social media has opened up a whole can of worms, bro, you know? I post things sometimes and I immediately delete them. You know, even
because of recourse or because of how people react?
No, without even people reacting, I'm like, yourself. Someone's going to be like, fuck you, bro. You know, you're...
But back to AA, you are you active?
Yes, I go on. So I'm co-chair of a Sunday meeting.
Okay.
I have I fill in when the main chair is not there. I do service for addicts. I have two sponsees, so I'm a sponsor. I have a sponsor as well. Shout out to my sponsor who's kept me sober for 3 years.
Well done, man.
But I go. My meeting is a Sunday one in Brookside, and I go twice a month. Do I live parts of the program on a daily basis? 100%. I make living amends. If I piss you off now, I will probably within the next 2 hours give you a call and say, I'm really sorry for my behavior, which is step 10. But there are two elements of A that's what I wanted to allude to, that I have issues with. One is I don't think I'm a drug addict, which you mentioned, an alcoholic anymore. If I felt like I needed a drink today, I would absolutely be happy saying it. The second thing is the overuse or use and overuse of the word disease. This is not a disease. I watched my mom die from cancer. She didn't choose to pick up cancer. Or
Don't they say spiritual malady? Like a spiritual...
Yeah, but they also say disease a lot. And the common conception is, so the common sort of rhetoric is that alcoholism and addiction is a disease. This is very unpopular when I share this in people who are very active in the AA program. My issue is, you take a person with cancer, which is a disease, right? They cannot decide to pour a double shot of cancer or a half a bottle of cancer or have cancer for the next 3 months and then say, okay, I'm done with cancer. I'm going to get on the straight and narrow and, get onto a road of health. That's not an option, right? I saw it with my own eyes.
It's not
with
an
my mom,
option.
Right?
That's key. It's not an option.
Right. So why were you drinking? Why does anyone drink? Alcohol is not the problem. It's a symptom.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? Which is a great way of looking at it. I grew up with some trauma in my life, and for many years it caused me to be very insecure, and I hid behind a microphone, or I hid behind sports in high school, and then I hid behind drugs and alcohol because I was covering something up. I was suppressing, I was numbing. And like I said, when the alcohol and drugs stopped, it was then women. Before it was alcohol, drugs, and women. Then it was just women. And then my justification was, but I'm not using anymore, so it's fine if I'm destroying this woman's life, kind of thing, right? So, but also in all of that, right, I was of free will. I could have said to anyone at any time, I can't stop drinking. I need help. 23 years of active addiction, drugs and alcohol. And only in the last 6 months did I realize that actually I could not stop on my own. So, if you've got HIV or you've got AIDS, full-blown AIDS, or if you've got cancer, you've got diabetes and you're about to have your leg lopped off, you can't, let's say cancer, I can't walk up to you and say, I need help from my cancer to get rid of it.
For cancer, yes. For AIDS, if you're Magic Johnson,
Yeah, I mean, but ARVs will just prolong your life, right? But he still has it, you know what I mean? So the whole point I'm trying to make is that whereas you can go at any point of your addiction to someone and say, I need help. And 9 out of 10 people, friends, family, whatever it is, will hold your hand through that process. If you're a good person, which innately we are. But if you have a cancer, you can't say, I need help to get rid of my cancer.
Yeah.
And they send you to a 90-day program and you come back and the cancer is gone. So I have an issue with the word disease.
I hate to say it, but you have a point there, and a very strong one at that. And I think a lot of times people lean on that to kind of
justify,
to win sympathy as well.
Yeah, and to justify their behaviors in the past. No, own your shit. Was I an asshole? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was I a good father? I was. Was I a bad husband? I was a terrible husband.
How did you hold it? Because for me, the first thing that would go was functionality. And functionality became basic, like attending to things that are meant to do, like tasks.
But I think,
You survived a high stress, high intensity, early morning career. And I used to there are times that fantasize about like, like, because for me, functionality, I'd drink to the point where I can't even wake up in the morning. Like,
I was just very functional, you know, and going back to radio, I love my job, you know, even in the dregs of my addiction, I love my job. But you know, it was not as straightforward towards the end. It was getting harder and harder to be accountable.
Were you missing work? Can you miss work in radio?
I wasn't on radio when I went to rehab. I was on one of my many breaks in my career, but I was doing a lot of production work, and I was missing meetings I wasn't present, you know. The only thing I'll say is I was always present for my sons, but I was not present for my now ex-wife. And we're on great terms now. We're fine, and I go in and out to visit my kids as often as I can to Switzerland. And it's.
Have you shared with them your story? That's something because
my eldest son knows. You know, when I opened up the addiction treatment center, the healing center.
Talk about that a bit.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. But the morning after the launch, which is 19th of May, 2025, I got a message from my 12-year-old son saying, "Congratulations on your addiction treatment center." You know, this is the dialogue I want to have with my kids, and I'll tell you, there's so many reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing in this space. So you know, inpatient rehab is fine, right? But inpatient rehab is for people like you and I who don't want to get clean, and are being forced to by our wives or our parents or whoever. So they want to get rid of you for 90 days, right? But what about the people that have jobs? What about the people that have families? What about the people that just cannot get away for 90 days? No one's addressing their needs. So that's what we've done. We don't call it outpatient because I don't like the word patient. We call it day visit. The place is called Full Circle Healing. And we have found the holistic and traditional approach to recovery.
And I think if done well as a recovering addict, there is definitely a space for that, because I've seen bullshit attempts at that.
Yeah.
That, of course, ended up being now just cannibalistic in terms of this trying to keep you there. And because I've gone through every version, 8 times rehab, from the most high end to the most gangster and everything in between.
Yeah.
And I've always felt like what you describe in terms of having a place, a haven, whilst you're continuing with your normal life.
Absolutely. And also allowing the relapse to happen. You know, that's the other area of program that I find weird, is that if you've relapsed, you know, it's like, oh, you're back to day 0. You know what I mean?
Day 1, start again.
I'm like, you know, so we are encouraging honesty and authenticity. We're not encouraging abstinence, because that is actually unrealistic, right? How many times did you try and get sober before it stuck as an addict?
9 times, man. 2 years in prison.
For me, I did 4 years of after rehab of trying to drink like a normal person and convincing myself that it was possible when in essence it was absolutely impossible. So we have a 12-week program which is called PAL, Path to Authentic Living, which combines traditional recovery methods and holistic recovery methods.
What do you mean by holistic?
It can be anything from reflexology, body talk, massage, yoga in the forest, whatever. It just, you know, we have a number of different things. I mean, it's fullcirclehealing.africa for anyone who's interested to have a look.
Put that on the screen.
Yeah, thanks. But you come Monday, Wednesday, Friday for a couple hours in the afternoon or in the morning, and then 2 Saturdays, which in a month for the 12 weeks. So 6 Saturdays in total. We'll be like, we'll just do with all the clients, we'll do like a Koroga, or we'll get in a van and go and climb Longonot, you know? And then 2 Sundays, which is where the family joins in, because family is a big part of recovery.
I'd love to come check that out, though.
It's amazing. Our space is beautiful. I was just there this morning, actually, because we've just added another office for the admin space. But what we're also really keen on is the family integration, because that's a big part that gets left behind. You know, you go away to 90 days, you come back, you look good, you feel good, and they're still in the same shit you left them in, right? So we need to figure out. So we found the bridge to that as well. And our head of family counseling, Bhavna, is incredible. And then it's the aftercare. What happens after you've achieved some sort of, you know, miles under your belt of sobriety? Who's taking care of you then? So that's one program. The other couple of things we're doing is, it's called Unique Healing Journeys. So basically, you come in as you don't have to be an addict. This can be for any kind of healing. You could be grief,
Trauma,
addiction, trauma, digital addiction, whatever the case may be. And you'll sit in a triage with our head of holistic counseling and our clinical psychologist, and they will design a program that they think will work for you.
Custom.
Yeah.
I think that's important.
No one's doing that.
Because there's no one size fits all.
No.
Having been in rehab many times,
Yeah.
and you hear talking to guys and we're well sharing, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, it's not some fundamentals. Yes, we all need certain,
Absolutely.
but everyone needs like a specific touch because they're all different.
Yeah, so we're offering that, and those are shorter periods, so you would get exposure to a few things, and then we reassess after a few weeks, and you say, oh, I really like the yoga, and I like the family counseling, and I like the body talk therapy, so I want to continue with those.
Do you do hypnotherapy?
Hypnotherapy, funny enough, my partners just met the hypnotherapist yesterday, so we'll be doing hypnotherapy as well.
My brother Sajid went through a hypnotherapy session. He told me it was amazing, but it was too real. Like he saw his younger self
I
talk
think
to him.
it's definitely got its benefits. So we have hypnotherapy as well. Then we outsource our expertise to workshops and things. We have corporate workshops we're doing. And the last thing is we have opened up Africa's first co-working healing space. So if you're a therapist or a holistic healer, you can come and use our space, and it's just based on a percentage of what you charge, etc. So it's quite multifaceted what we've done, and it was a year and a half in the making. The last 6 months were crazy. But yeah, we opened on the 19th of May,
I'd love to come check that out
by all means.
and see it properly.
Nestled in the leafy suburbs of Gigiri.
I'd love to. Yes, where my folks live. I'd love to come check that out. I'm actually heading there for a birthday today. But I got to ask, apart from that, what are you up to nowadays? What is your life? What does your life look like now? Because when we flew you were coming from, you talked about impact stories.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
So I still work in the production space. So I was doing some impact stories for a corporate client on their reach and the impact they've had on some of their customers.
Do you have to embellish?
No.
Just keep it real.
I mean, some for this particular shoot, no, but sometimes you need to, Sometimes Kenyans are not as expressive as you'd like them to be. But then I do any kind of production, right? I'm off to Amboseli on Tuesday morning to shoot for a lodge and for a client rather who wants the lodge to be the centerpiece of his story. Commercials we still do, I was doing a lot of commercials for a couple of betting companies, but as we know now, that's been...
Is that permanent? Have they banned it permanently or just negotiating?
It's the same thing.
Is this Nusu Nusu?
No, it's a company called Action Pack, actually.
Action Pack,
Nusu, we stopped working together about 5-6 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, before I let you go, I got to ask you a few things around conspiracies, because that's something I also love. I delve in now. What conspiracies do you subscribe to? It could be anything from moon landing to where's Epstein. Because I genuinely believe everything that's happening now has something to do with those Epstein files. In terms of even the war that's being lodged. I feel like, because 4 or 5 days ago the tweet happens, and then everything else just breaks loose, and everyone has forgotten about the fact that this guy literally just said, yo, this guy is on the Epstein file as well.
So I think it's interesting you said that. We were talking about this yesterday, and just going back to the Albert Ojwang murder. We call it a murder, right? Yeah. And how I wonder what will happen here to take the focus off that, because that's how we live as Kenyans, right? We can protest for the next 3 months or 2 months, whatever it is, but at some point, as you all know,
something else will happen.
Will be manufactured, so we forget this happened, and it's history, and it happens all over the world, not just here. So conspiracy theories wise,
put on your tinfoil hat, man.
Put on
your tinfoil hat.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think of like what conspiracies
Did we go to the moon?
No,
that's
all Hollywood.
You don't think we went to the moon?
No.
So why would Russia not snitch on America to the world and be like, yo, these guys didn't really go? Because it was a space race, right? Because I don't believe we went, but I've never been able to rationalize the why other countries didn't call them out. Like, yo,
I think it's irrelevant, really. I mean, it's two schools of thought, man. I mean, there were too many shadows, and it looks like there was proper lighting. You know what I mean? Like a real setup of like some sort of like film set. So no, I don't think we went to the moon.
Is the world round?
I think it is, and we saw that from the spaceships of Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. that the world is round.
Did you see the Jeff Bezos Supergirl thing? Those ladies who went up, and it was just so disastrous.
Yeah, the whole thing is disastrous. Katy Perry was on that.
Yeah,
night, right?
Oh my God, we're in space! Like, oh my God,
it's ridiculous. So conspiracy theories. Wow, man, I don't know, man.
Who do you think is on the Epstein list?
everybody.
Because it has to be everybody. The reason I say that is,
I heard Bono from U2 was on the flight manifest twice.
probably. I mean,
No, like his actual name, whatever his name is, Jeff Adams or whatever it is.
at least twice you can. It's better than 27, like Clinton. 27 times. How do you even
But
explain?
also, man, like if you were around and Epstein was like, "Yo, come to my island," I mean,
But
it'd be hard to say no, bro. You know what I mean?
Are you on the list?
No, man, no, not on that list. So it's interesting, the whole conspiracy theories thing. I have so many weird moments in my life where I'm like, did that actually happen? Even going back to sort of 9/11. What was the joke I heard the other day? It was in 2023, and it said, "What's the difference between 9/11 and a cow?" And it's like, you can't milk a cow for 12 years.
No, but 9/11 right now, anyone who's done any homework around it it's pretty clear that it was not only an inside job. There were so many moving parts.
But I wonder what was happening in the world that had to be the distraction. You know what I mean? Right now, I'm a news junkie, have been my whole life. And this Iran-Israel thing is fucking crazy, dude.
But why Iran is coming out like, are these guys toothless, man?
No, they've just attacked Israel overnight.
I was comparing the attack and I looked at it carefully. I'm like,
I
okay.
just think that Israel has like an incredible defense system.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And
But
how do you just lose 4 or 5 main your
top guys,
your main
like
guys
nuclear fucking
have just been
physicists.
wiped out just like that?
Bro, let me tell you that Iranians in sort of historically are not afraid to die. They're not afraid to die.
And news has become we're so desensitized. Yeah. I saw someone who did a piece where they were putting out the faces of the guys dead, and then it was like a video game, so they put their face and then they gray it out like dead. Like in a video game. I'm like, yo.
I wish I was on like that SEAL Team 6 that went to find Bin Laden though, man. You know what I mean? I like that was the coolest shit.
I like the things they found on his laptop.
Yeah.
This guy was a dude.
But even the guy who came out in his underwear eating like hummus or something, and he's like, "Was it a?" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just so crazy when you think about like how it's all been sort of. It's all Hollywood now, isn't it? Everything, Obama sitting in the Oval Office watching them find Bin Laden and all that. I have no idea what to think of Donald Trump. Part of me wants to love the guy, because I think he's made some...
Your alpha, the alpha that lives inside your brain.
No, but also, like, if you look at, this is also going to be extremely unpopular. If you look at USAID, right? This is a huge blow to possibly funding and poverty eradication and HIV and research and funding, whatever the case may be, okay? But what he did overnight is something that should have been done gradually over 5 to 7 years, right? There's a lot of wastage in these NGOs, as we know, and a lot of USAID funding goes to the UN, so now they're in a bit of a fix as well. And I speak to people, especially being based in Gigiri, you speak to people in these organizations. The decision that he made to pull the plug on the funding overnight, am I mad at it? Not really. Do I think it was too soon to do it? Oh, like the whole Band-Aid effect, you're gonna sort of pull off some hairs along the way. Maybe it could have been done in a more sort of like pragmatic, with a more pragmatic
regimented,
approach.
nice. Yeah.
But I don't, I don't want to like the guy because I think he's an absolute megalomaniac. But I also think that he's necessary for the United States right now. People are all complaining about, this sort of ICE, the guys who remove Mexicans and illegal immigrants and stuff. The way it's being handled is pretty rotten. Will it?
But how else?
Will it reduce the crime rate? Probably.
Yeah, but how else? How else do you you can't be like, hey guys, so we're rounding you guys up. It has to be some of the hard decisions people have to make.
But also the downside to Trump, right? Like there's a downside to Trump too, right? I mean, obviously he's insane in his own way, and says a lot of things that he shouldn't say and does a lot of things that he shouldn't do. It was only a matter of time before him and Elon Musk fell out anyway. But I think he's necessary.
You know why I got scared, Fareed? The time when Ramaphosa was in the Oval Office and Trump was
the white genocide.
Yeah, the white genocide, and then the pictures you were shown. So we come from this side of the world, Africa, so we're quite versed with what's happening for real in South Africa. And it made me wonder, like, what else? If that's your perspective, that means your briefings, you either don't go through briefings diligently, or you just don't know what's going on, and some guys just present to you shit.
Oh, he's just trying to fool the world into
So
believing something.
So what happens if those people who present to you stuff are compromised and want to just push their own agenda?
Which is what happens.
That they can just give you pictures and you buy it. And
But it happens a lot with him, doesn't it, with Trump? He gets a lot of information wrong.
That's worrying.
Yeah.
That's really worrying.
But again, I think it would be more worrying if America was what it was 10 years ago. It's not the same country. And I spent 18 years of my life in the U.S., in Florida, Georgia, and California. So I've kind of seen every side of, sort of like the blue side and the red side of the country. I just don't think America is what it was. So we're just kind of watching it almost like
disintegrate,
like a comedy, because it is a comedy. Is he right for now? I think that people, everything happens for a reason. In the world, maybe it was time for the Republican era to end for a while, and so they're like, okay, let's give this guy 4 years so everyone can say that the Republicans are absolute idiots and bring Democrats back. I don't know, but I think he's cleaning up. You have to remember, oh God, I could say so many unpopular things that are going to get me absolutely canceled, but I'm going to say it anyway.
You can't get canceled. Can I say why? We realize it's the loud minority. Get the loud minority. So they're loud, but they're few.
But everyone says Obama was the best president in the United States. His presidency was good.
I was almost lynched in rehab for having a counter.
But the truth of the matter is, Obama was just a cool motherfucker, dude. Like the coolest. So
swaggiest.
So we kind of overlook some things because he was a cool cat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Every president, in any country that comes in is also cleaning up messes from previous regimes or leadership. I'm not going to get into politics here because I like my life a lot, so I'm just going to not touch that. But what's happening here and in East Africa, and we had a laugh yesterday. Museveni and his wife apologized the other day. You saw that, right?
In a nursery presentation kind of way.
Yeah, but they apologized for the wrongs they'd done to the Ugandan people over time. And I said, when Museveni is the softest leader in East Africa, we're fucked.
That's a problem.
We're fucked. And right now, truthfully after that, he is the softest leader of the big three countries in East Africa. And that is a problem.
I hate to say, but you're right. If you look around in terms of what happened in Tanzania,
it's a problem, bro. We are living in really weird times, and there's a concern, man. I mean, everyone here in this country there's this holding of breath that's happening.
Yeah. Here talk
what
about
next?
Dual citizenship.
But how long before the next thing happens? What happened to Albert is
terrible.
It's. No parent should bury their child, bro. It's not natural,
And in that manner.
No, I can understand if your child has leukemia, cancer. These things happen, and it's unfortunate. It's heartbreaking, but that's life.
Final two questions. And this one just ties to what you said. Because I feel like we're just teetering on a flashpoint. Like all Kenya needs a flashpoint. We're building up to 25th anniversary of what happened last year. These guys are joking with it. I mean, by these guys, I mean the powers that be. I mean, how can you kill a guy in custody so nonchalantly? Do you think there's a chance everything can just go to the dogs? From people stop holding their breath and saying enough is enough.
Yeah, I do think that we're teetering on that possibility as a country right now. If I look at even the way the protesters are approaching the police, there's no fear.
Guys are grabbing guns.
There's no fear.
Yeah.
And when you remove fear from the demoralized, when you remove fear from those who feel like they have been marginalized, when you remove fear from people that you once could oppress, that's where the schism happens.
And last question, Fareed, why aren't you doing this?
A podcast.
Yeah. Don't tell me time.
No. I haven't found the right subject matter yet. You know what I mean? I haven't found the right angle yet. I will. I tried with a geopolitical one. It kind of fell flat. I did one on mental health, which is still being released. But I haven't found the right...
Humble word of advice. Don't find anything. Just start and have conversations. That's it. If you try to have a niche...
well, maybe we should be doing this every week.
Yeah, why don't we do this? Why don't you become a regular...
I mean, I could.
Yeah.
Sure. Why not? If we just start doing it like these guys who just have the two guys talking every week. Not who are these two guys? You know the one. This funny Oriental guy who talks about being touched up as a kid. You know the
Tiger Belly. What's his name? Him and the orange guy, Santino.
Yeah, where they're just laughing at this poor guy.
Yeah.
We could do that.
My true north, I've said severally. Everyone knows I'm a huge Joe Rogan fan, and I'm trying to build a podcast sphere. So if you look at what I've been doing of late, it's very Joe Rogan-esque in terms of the kind of guests I have, I don't know if you've seen the trio episode I do with Sajid, where you also have your cohort of friends, where you just come and talk shit, talk conspiracy, talk life. Why don't you just be a regular? And then, because of your skill set and experience, bro, to pivot into your own thing would be so easy, provided you don't have that niche thing attached. Just be. I know you come from an era of production and script, but the secret sauce in all this thing is just be. I didn't send you questions. We've gone everywhere. We've touched on your life story. We've touched on psychedelics. We've gone to politics. We've talked about here. We've talked about big pharma. That's just it.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm down.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For me, this was a dream come true, man. I have 23 years I have waited. But thanks for coming, Fareed.
No problem.
I think this is episode 49 or 50. Yeah? Every other time with Eric, Fareed Khimani.
Do you ever structure the episodes, or everyone just comes in and just talks?
We just go off the door.
I mean, it works.
Yeah. Every other time with Eric, Fareed Khimani. It's a wrap. It's been a long time coming. If you haven't subscribed, guys, what are you doing? We're at 21K. Let's try to get to 50K. It's a wrap.